first off that my understanding of the sermon as a thing that ministers do is that it is a manifestation of a long and ongoing conversation between all of you and me. So this is the beginning of an exploration. It is not the whole exploration. And it is only representative of this one point in time. So I hope that if some of the things that I say this morning spark a response in you, whether you say, yes, that makes sense, I like that, or no, that is completely wrong, I hope you will come and talk with me about it so that we can be in dialogue. This topic came about because on 2 different Sundays in October, I made a casual reference to God as a small word that means a lot of things. And some of you said, well, what are those things? So we're going to talk about some of them today. But the necessary prelude to trying to talk about what God means was delivered to me by Facebook the other day. A friend of mine posted one of the Peanuts comic strips. Remember those? Charlie Brown and Linus and Lucy and the dog Snoopy. So Charlie Brown walks up to his dog, Snoopy, and Snoopy is always writing things on his typewriter in these comics, right? So Snoopy is typing, and Charlie Brown says, I hear you're writing a book about theology. I hope you have a good title. And Snoopy says, I have the perfect title. My title is, has it ever occurred to you that you might be wrong? This seems appropriate. Because really, when we begin to talk about God, we are beginning to talk about the ways in which we as humans try to make sense of the world and life, of what we can perceive and of what we can't perceive. So it's always possible that we might be wrong. For Unitarian Universalists, I think that's part of the fun of it. Because if we might be wrong, there might be something else. That's kind of cool. We are seekers, we are questioners, we are people who keep learning new things. One of the classic interactions that a number of UU ministers have had with congregants is that somebody comes up to the minister and says, well, I want to tell you that I don't believe in God. And the minister says, okay, tell me about the God you don't believe in. That might be a God that I don't believe in either. Now let's talk about some other ideas and see if those make sense. Because all ideas of God can only be metaphors. They might be metaphors for a reality that we cannot fully perceive. They might be metaphors simply as stories that give us guidance for how we live our lives. But those stories matter because they give us models that we invent. So if we see God as a metaphor, a parent, then we see a force of protection, and maybe also of discipline and evaluation, but also of nurturing love. These metaphors help guide us about what it is that we are trying to bring into the world of our lives. In the Islamic tradition, there are 99 names for Allah, or God. They name all sorts of attributes. Some of them include the most compassionate, the merciful, the possessor of supreme power and authority, the giver, the holy, peace, the artist, the overcomer, the bestower, the friend, or, I like these pairings, the expediter who brings forward, and the delayer who puts far away, the first and the last, the comforter as well as the distresser. These are all ways to look at facets of a very large idea. Again, we have to be careful not to be trapped in only one facet. The Lutheran minister Nadia Bolz-Weber says, you know, it would be like if I got up in front of my church every Sunday and prayed, oh, red-headed God, we just praise you for being red-headed. Don't get distracted. Don't fixate on one human characteristic. talk about God having hands and God having ears and God having eyes, but you have to remember those are human ideas. Those are parts of human experience. Those are metaphors. And to talk about other ways of understanding God, beyond those you may have heard, those that use their human metaphors. I'm going to give you the 5-cent tour through about 250 years of liberal theology. So please know that this is cursory, and I'm happy to dig into any of it more if you are curious. We begin in the early 1800s with our own Unitarian Christian forebears and the Transcendentalists who grew out of those early Unitarians, who have begun to say, well, God is not something human, but God is something humans can grow toward. A source of ultimate goodness, a source of benevolence and justice. Something that we strive to move toward and to have union with. I have placed my notes out of order, so it's really interesting. We can move from there into some of the understandings that come up in the early 20th century among liberal theologians, who began to say, you know, I don't know that God is anything that has any human characteristics at all. Perhaps God is creativity. God is new things coming forth. This reminds me a little bit of Sophia Lyon-Foss saying, God is what helps the seed know how to grow. But these early 20th century theologians said, no, I think it's just creativity, which can be really good or can be really destructive. It's simply the fact that new things are unfolding. So not only what helps the seed to grow, but what causes the seed to die and rot and decompose into something else. Change, perhaps. Change as a name for God. Among those early 20th century theologians, there are those working on what's called process theology, who would say that not only is it the change and the unfolding, but that what we can call God is the thing that hints to us that when we are making choices as things are unfolding, some choices lead to more good than others. These folks refer to God as the lure. So if you're a fisher, that may be a metaphor that works for you. You're beckoning toward something. In the later 20th century, theologians began to say, no, this is a playful endeavor. This is something where we can't take too seriously our ideas. And in fact, in refusing to take things seriously, we may open up more understanding. We get concepts like this children's story about playing hide and seek with God, being open to surprise, being open to what might emerge, being curious, letting our creativity help us change our understandings. But also, especially coming out of feminist and womanist traditions in the late 20th century and the early 21st century, there is an understanding of God as a name for relationship. There are ways that we understand ourselves in relationship as two different people, but then there is the relationship itself. And so some say that fact of relationship, that is the way we can understand God. Ivona Guevara, a Brazilian ecofeminist, says, to seek God is to seek our own humanity in an attempt to speak of ourselves beyond our own limitations and contingencies, and to heal a kind of wound that we feel within us always. To be people who struggle with isolation and loneliness puts us on a quest to understand what it means to be related, to live in the truth of those relationships, to repose in them like a duck in the ocean. And from Monica Coleman, a womanist theologian, God is not only what calls us toward the good possibilities, but for her, God is what makes a way out of no way, what opens opens up possibilities that we didn't even see. It allows us to do things that we could not have imagined. So that is about a nickel's worth of theology. We'll get into more in other times. But let me say about my understanding of God that the amoral idea of God as nothing but creativity, good or bad, without any intent, that doesn't work for me. When I think about the metaphors that help guide me to be the person that I want to be in the world, I look for metaphors that have to do with sources of love and goodness, with a desire for good intent, with compassion for suffering. So the indifferent, amoral God, for me, does not help me. I think instead about what it is that calls me to be my best self, what it is that I can dedicate my life toward. Some of those passages from the Hebrew scriptures that we talked about in October talked about the commitment to serve God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. So what is it that I can hold up in that way to serve? And I think about a mentor of mine who says that for her, God is the ever-present possibility of right relations. So not only the fact of relatedness, but the possibility, the call, the lure toward being sure that in all of my relationships, I am practicing right relations. Now, what is right relations? You may know this from the Buddhist tradition. Right relationship, in the words of environmentalist Jasmine Wallace, is being in relationship with ourselves and all life forms around us, whether they are plants, animals, or humans. Being aware that what we think and what we do determines our world and what is in it. And understanding the truth that what we think and what we do influences the future of our children, our planet, and all the things within it and on it. This concept is at the foundation of sustainable and practical living. It involves the knowledge that there is no such thing as separation. Everything in our world is directly involved with us, and we are involved with it. The key is that it is our choice to take responsibility for our thoughts and actions and relationships, and focus on making the impact of our lives positive. So if God is a name for the potential in every moment to live into right relationship, that is something I can aim my life towards serving. But also, if God is a name for my inchoate sense that there is love in the world, that there is something in existence that desires the happiness and the wholeness and the goodness of each of us, then I hold both those understandings together. Because the work of being in right relationship is hard. Now I'm going to confess something to you, and I hope that this is true of you too. Sometimes I don't want to be in right relationship. I'm kind of mad at somebody, and I don't really want to be kind to them today. Or I think about, well, what is the environmental impact of doing this or that? But gosh darn it, I really want to do it. It's hard. But to remember that part of my understanding is not only the call to try to do the best I can to realize the potential of right relationship, but to also hold the truth that there are so many sources of love in my life that are not conditioned upon my ability to live out right relationship. Makes it easier to try to live in right relationship. When I did my internship as a hospital chaplain, my supervisor said to me and to all the other chaplain interns, he said, remember, when you walk into those hospital rooms, you represent God. And everybody looked at me because I was the only Unitarian Universalist in the cohort, and they said, well, what does she think God is? And I said, I don't really know. This is a project I will be working on for my entire life. singing to Anne as a lullaby since the day she was born. And all of these different things that we can name as God. So much bigger than what any one religion can describe. And I looked at my fellow interns and I said, well, I guess that means my job is to go in and try to communicate to people that they are not alone, that they are loved, and that more possibility is still unfolding. And the Catholic and the Episcopalian and the Lutheran and the Seventh-day Adventists all said, yeah, I guess that sounds okay. All right, yeah, that's a pretty good definition of God. And I thought, okay, good, because it's the only one I've got right now. It continues to unfold. I continue to learn new things and to have conversations and to have new experiences. And I am reminded by other ministers that I am not alone in this quest and in trying to make sense of what sometimes has no logical or rational explanation. So the words of another UU minister, chaplain Barbara Stevens, she says, in my experience, the voice of God is always about love. Forgiveness, grace, mercy, acceptance, inclusion, and yes, that incredible mama bear love that insists that the beloved, which is ultimately everyone and everything, will not be harmed, yet is a justice-seeking love that is never rageful, violent, or aggressive. If the voice or thought or experience does not carry that awesome, sweep you off your feet kind of love, then it's probably not the voice of God. She says, there are moments when I feel a love for the person in front of me when I'm serving as a chaplain. And that love is so huge, so tender, so fervent with the desire for the person to hear and see and feel this love. And I know it's not mine because I can't possibly produce that kind of love. And so I believe and know and trust that something larger than myself is gracing me with the opportunity to be a channel for that love. One final thought about the source of this love is that even if the concept of vertical transcendence, of a God who is elsewhere and not part of this reality does not work for you, you can still understand a transcendent source of love which flows between all that is, which comes between people and through each of us. There is a meditation in which you envision someone who loves you sitting behind you, and you feel yourself filled by the love of that person. And then you envision someone who needs love in front of you, and you imagine yourself pouring out that love. And you will never be empty because you are always being filled as you are always giving. So there is that concept also of the relatedness of the source of love. I look forward to ongoing conversation with all of you about how we understand these and many more ideas about God